Okay, I see all these names flooding in. I'm so excited for all these ladies that are joining us today. We're going to give it a few minutes so that everyone can get logged in and into our seminar. But while we're waiting, I would love to hear from you guys. I'd like to know where everybody, or everybody might be a bit much, but if some of you will share where you're actually coming from, where you reside, where you live. I want to see what kind of diversity we have from a regional standpoint in our room today. So if you would like to put that in the chat room, that would be amazing. Asheville, North Carolina. Wow. Grand Rapids, Michigan. Fort Lauderdale. This is a great roll call. Indianapolis, Milwaukee. The ladies that we have that you all are going to hear from today are going to be awesome for you guys. Had no idea we had so many people coming from so many different places. Silver Springs, Maryland, Rochester, Chicago, Fort Lauderdale by way of, or Athens, Ohio by way of Fort Lauderdale, Memphis. I spent a little time in Memphis. I'm actually a Germantown High School graduate. Nashville, Tennessee, that's where I'm based out of today. Hello, Nashville. Hello, New York. Roswell, Georgia. Connecticut, absolutely. This is so awesome. Thank you guys. Oh, all the way from the West Coast, Los Angeles. Wow. You got up a little early for LA to be on here today, didn't you? North Liberty, Iowa, Boulder, Colorado, Ohio. Somebody else from Ohio. My parents are in Ohio, so I love Ohio. Nashville again, Chapel Hill, North Carolina, UNC, right? New York. Thank you, ladies. This is so awesome. We're really excited. I think we had over 170 people register. So we are very excited by the amount of people that are on here. That says to us that you guys are thinking about running in all these different places. And that's really exciting for us this time especially, but at any time. So thank you for being here. Thank you so much. Anybody else want to share where you're coming in from today? We're going to get started in just a minute. Detroit, Michigan. I know it's cold up there. It's sunny and 60s in Nashville today. DC, that's an exciting place to be right now. California again. Look at these California people getting up and at it early. Dallas, Texas. Thank you so much. Denver, Colorado. I've been looking at skiing. I think it's probably one of the safer things to do this winter, and I've been looking at places to ski, so Colorado's on my mind. Apex, North Carolina, great. Well, thank you all, ladies. I'm ready to get started. I'm sure we will have more continue to kind of join us as we go through, and that'll be great. Towards the end, we will have an opportunity for you guys to share with us any questions that you may have of our I was going to say our candidates. These are not candidates, of our elected officials that are with us today. If you just keep that in the chat screen, we'll monitor that, or actually I believe we have a question and answer section where you're able to put that in, and we will monitor that and try to facilitate as many of those questions as possible. Thank you everybody who has joined us today. My name is Stephanie Williams, and I am the president of the Women's Political Collaborative of Tennessee. And I am honored to serve as the moderator today and appreciate this program that is brought to us by She Should Run. I work here in Nashville, Tennessee as an appointed judicial officer, and I too aspire to run for an elected position on the bench in the near future. And organizations like the Women's Political Collaborative, which is a bipartisan organization that promotes the full and equal participation of women in government and in the political process, and organizations like She Should Run, give women like me and those of you tuned in today the inspiration, confidence, and support that we need to make that big step. And so I'm very thankful for these organizations. I'm very thankful for this program that She Should Run has put together for all of us today. I am thrilled again to host this program. This is the final She Should Run Road to Run events of 2020. And so again, we're basing it here out of Tennessee. We're focusing on Tennessee as a big place for people to be inspired and to run. For those of you who are unfamiliar, She Should Run is a nonprofit, nonpartisan nonprofit organization working to dramatically increase the number of women considering running for public office. They acknowledge and combat the challenge that women are less likely to run for public office. And so therefore women are seriously underrepresented in political positions. So She Should Run offers a solution by motivating women from all walks of life to explore the possibility of public office by identifying and tackling the barriers to elected leadership. This is done through data-driven content, education, and collective action. You should know that women are 51% of the US population, yet we only represent about a third of the voices in government that dictate how our country and our states and our local communities operate. And in the South specifically, there is no state with more than 25% representation of women. Though today we have some trailblazers with us, the two council ladies that we have that are representative of two different districts or jurisdictions here in Tennessee have the pleasure to serve on balanced councils. And I can say for here in Nashville, this is a first in our 2019 election that we had an equal amount of women on our council, our city council, as we do men. So that's a big deal. And at the same time, even though we have this underrepresentation of the majority of our population, the tides are changing. This election cycle gave us great hope in that we saw a record number of Republican women running for office and sustained high candidate turnout for Democratic women. And at all levels of government, women are starting to envision themselves as public officials and are pursuing these offices. And even better, people are starting to respond to these pursuits with celebration, encouragement, and support. And as we know, it is the diversity of voices that brings the smartest solutions to the table. And the mountain challenges facing our country are complex. If we're gonna solve them, we no longer can afford to have half of our population, half of our brains out of the conversation. And quite frankly, we know women really really bring it together. So we cannot afford to have this underrepresentation of women in these conversations. We need a government that represents the voices for all Americans. And the truth is, each and every one of us stands to benefit from having diverse perspectives in government. In addition to enhancing our democracy through representation, increasing women's representation in government provides role models for young girls. It provides benchmarks for other women to see themselves as qualified for similar positions. And it increases government focus on issues specifically facing women and children. And however, it's just not the women running that are going to turn this around. It takes all of us to actively get invested in women. So we want to make sure that we get a support from men as well. It takes everybody getting this active participation to get more women in office. She Should Run has a community of over 20,000 women who have shared with their interests and concerns. And from these conversations, the Road to Run series was born. These events are opportunities to discuss the importance of women in politics, identify barriers that stand in the way, and encourage everyone to get involved by bringing gender parity to politics. And today, we get to discuss hope. She Should Run chose to end their Road to Run series here in Tennessee because women in this state and in our surrounding region have a strong history of activism and engagement. Our voices belong in government, and we are primed to take on the role in powerful ways. Studies consistently show that women in elected offices are more likely to work across party lines, bring more money back to their home districts, and actively build healthier societies. Election predictions indicate that we could be in for another year of the woman, and then another and another, because women are more politically engaged and inspired than ever. That's hope for you. We hope and anticipate for a future where women make up half of all elected officials, at least, right? However, getting there requires us to invest in ground level training and myth busting, speaking to the rising generation about political opportunities, and inviting all people, regardless of party or gender, to support the movement and get more women in office, a topic that we will focus on today. So Here today, I am joined by two wonderful and inspiring women serving here in Tennessee. We have Nashville Councilwoman Zulfat Suara and Knoxville Councilwoman Janet Testerman. Let me tell you a little bit about Councilwoman Suara. As an elected official, she was elected as an at-large council position here in Davidson County, Nashville, in September of 2019. We have 5 at-large council positions, and they serve the whole city. Their jurisdiction, our territory, is the entire city of Nashville, and so several people will run for this race, and the top 5 candidates actually win and get to fill the seats. With over 34,000 votes from a diverse population, she became the first Muslim elected to the metropolitan government of Nashville and Davidson County, the first immigrant elected to an at-large position. She is also the first Muslim woman elected in the state of Tennessee, and the first Nigerian woman elected to any office in the United States. And I can say this, out of that race with several candidates, she came in second. So she was in the top 5. She came in second. And she was very unapologetic about herself as a woman of color, as a Muslim woman, as a Nigerian woman. She was who she was and ran this race and was very, very successful. And we're very proud of her here in Nashville. I had the chance of meeting just this morning before we got started, Councilwoman Testerman, who is a Knoxville native, go Vols. And she is the CEO of Young Williams Animal Center. Prior to joining the local nonprofit animal welfare organization, she spent nearly a decade in communications as a manager of internal communication for Scripps Network Interactive, and earlier as an executive editor of EW Scripps Custom Publications, Knoxville Magazine, and Skirt. Before returning to her communications background, Councilwoman Testerman owned and operated Testerman Cooperative Catering, a full-service off-premise catering company, for nearly 8 years. And she was elected to the Knoxville City Council at-large seat B, in 2019, and has served on numerous boards, including Knoxville Tourism and Sports Corporation, which is now Visit Knoxville, Bijou Theater, Dogwood Arts, Leadership Knoxville, and Young Williams Animal Center for 5 years prior to joining the organization full-time. And so I'm very excited to share these speakers, these incredible women, with you today. I want to start off with Councilwoman Suara, and she's going to share with us a little bit about what inspired her towards public service, kind of what her experience has been, how she channeled that vision into reality, and just highlight for us hopes that she has for ideas, innovation, and opportunities that will be made available with more women in elected office. So at this time, Councilman Suara, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you, Stephanie, and thanks everybody for having me. Thanks to Sharon and WPC, and thanks for everyone that joined. I'm inspired by the theme, which is hope. I think that we run because we have the hope to change things. And women in the course of history have changed things. I'm glad that we are in Tennessee. When you look at our history here, where women have done things over the year, I'm proud to say that Tennessee, Nashville, was the last state to ratify the 19th Amendment that gave women the right to vote. Tennessee played an important role in that, and a lot of women fought for that. You're sitting in Nashville, or I'm sitting in Nashville, where we have Diane Nash and a bunch of students from Fisk that fought for civil rights with their lunch counter seats in Nashville. And when people put themselves forward for any cause, whether civil rights, human rights, women's rights, is because they know things needs to change. It's because they know that there's a hope for the future. And in order for that hope to be a reality, somebody's got to step up. For me, I've been involved in politics for a very long time, but I started out as an advocate. I was living in rural Tennessee when I first heard the notion of women making less than men. And it was like, what? Here? No. So I joined an organization called the Business and Professional Women of Tennessee. I was with them for, I'm still with BPWR. I was a state president for a number of years. We've had collaboration with WPC and so many organizations that we actually talk to our elected officials about issues impacting women and girls in Tennessee. And so as an advocate, I love it. I love coming to the state capitol to talk to our elected officials, and I enjoy it. But over the years, advocacy is not what it is anymore. You find out that in those days, when you talk to an elected officials, you can present facts and be able to convince people to vote. Unfortunately, things are not like that anymore. And you see bills that are being passed that are impacting women, about women's right, about women's body, that nobody's actually listening to the women. And so that was part of the reason why I started thinking about running. And I ran in 2014 first in Bolivar, Tennessee, for school board. At that point, there was a young man that went to college, but nobody told him he needed to be very strong in math to be able to do engineering. He ended up spending so many years in college because of that. And I thought the guidance counselor should have done something about that. And so I stepped in at that point. It was my first time running in rural Tennessee. I was able to get 41% of the vote. I did not win, but it gave me some lessons. And when I moved to Nashville, again, the tide is changed, so many things going on, specifically for the at-large race that I ran in. I tell everyone I run for so many reasons. The first reason was the education system. When I first lived in Nashville, my kids went to school in West Nashville. But when I came back the second time, my daughter, my youngest, went to school in North Nashville, which is predominantly African American neighborhood. As I get involved in the school, I realize there's a lot of disparity in the resources that is in our school. The school that my daughter went to do not have enough computers. They have computer card. And I could not believe that is happening in a city that has so much money. And I thought we need to do something. Education is very important. My dad always say, is the one thing that is yours that nobody can take away from you. As somebody who went to school in Nigeria, that is what I brought to the States. And education is very important in whatever we do. And so we cannot talk about education. We cannot even talk about economic development without education. And we cannot talk about education if our kids do not have equal opportunity or equal resources. Then I saw the state of the social emotional learning in our schools. Kids in areas that need help, that instead of being helped are being punished. And so that was the one of the reasons why I ran. The second reason is that Nashville was booming. It's an each city, but people are not feeling that growth. I'm a CPA by trade. I'm an assistant controller at a university here. I had my CPA firm for a number of years, and I work with a number of counties in West Tennessee. And so I was looking at our budget and I was wondering about how we're making so much money, but our people are suffering. We have our minimum wage the same in 10 years, but the cost of living kept going up. And I'm looking at it as a CPA is that, look, we need to take a look at the budget. We need to make sure that our budget reflects the priorities that the people want. As someone who's an advocate, I'm on the ground talking to the people, and I believe that that budget is not reflective of what is good for the people. And so I decided that since budget is something we're talking about, is finances is something we're talking about, this is my area of expertise, something that I've done for over 30 years. The last reason also is that Nashville has been very good to me and my family. And so I wanted to give back to the city. I know it sounds like a cliche, but if I'm going to give back, I realized that I can use my professional education as an accountant, as a CPA, but I should also use my experience as a mother, knowing what is going on in the school, and as an advocate for women for over 20 years to be able to say this is where things need to go. And those were the reason why I jump in. I'm glad that I did. What I've seen is that, look, I believe that people make decisions based on their experiences, and the decision they would make is limited if they're not exposed to it. As an African American woman, I know what it's like when you're talking about driving while Black. I am a mother of two Black boys. So issues like that is not something that somebody will have to tell me. When you're talking about women's body and women's right to their body, when you're talking about equal pay, I know about that. Nobody needs to describe those to me. Those are things that are very personal. And so I can bring those experiences to the table to channel the conversation. I'll give you an example. We had a conversation about school resources, and somebody said, well, we need to leave it to the parents and let the PTA deal with it. That's fine and dandy. Parents need to be involved. PTO needs to be involved. Unfortunately, not every school has a PTO. Not every PTO has enough funds. And so if we're going to leave it to schools that have the funds, then some schools that don't have will definitely be left out. That's a personal experience. That's something that I know about, not something someone told me about. And so having those voices at the table, being able to bring those experiences and share what is actually going on the ground has been an eye opener. And it's been able to help change some of the conversation. So I'm very excited to have the opportunity to be there. I'm grateful to the people of Nashville for giving me that opportunity. I'm very hopeful that, like Stephanie said, we have a 2020 council right now with 20 female and 20 male, which is the first in history. But what that does is that it allows us to have a very diverse opinion. It allows us to be able to bring everybody to the table. It allows us to be able to combine all those different experiences and to be able to make decisions that are best for our city. I'm very hopeful that a lot more people will continue to run. I do believe that Stephanie said we're hoping for 50%. I'm glad we have 50%, but I think we should have more. We run the homes. We've been doing this for a long time. I hope a lot of women will have the courage to run. And I'm going to close on this. What I tell everyone is that if I can do it, I think a lot of people can. People of Nashville listen and look at my background, both my education background and my advocacy background, and what I bring to the table. They did not look at the color of my skin. They did not look at the fact that I'm a Muslim to be able to say, well, she knows what she's talking about. And so that's what we're going to need for people to know that, look, if she can do it, I always joke that I have a lot of things against me. I'm Black, I'm a woman, I'm a Muslim, I dress funny, I have an accent. I'm a big woman, so you can keep counting. And we can always find a reason for us not to run. But we have to know that we should not let all of that stop us. There's that saying that says, if not you, then who? And then if not now, when? We have to take control of our homes, of our houses, of our country. And we as mothers have to step in when we see things that are going on that impact our children and to be able to do that. So I'm hopeful that we have more of that. And I think when we do, I think we'll continue to have a better city, state, and country for all of us. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Councilman Suara. I just want to point out to everybody that is joining us today, you've heard the passion in Councilman Suara's speech. You've heard her qualifications about what she can do for our community. And that she's passionate about it. She's got the experience and education behind her, but she's got the personal experience. And so when we think about that, I just want to plant this seed. If she chose not to run, not to take that step, what a disservice that would be to us as a community. Look at what we would miss out on. So thank you for your courage. Thank you for your motivation, and now your inspiration to these women that are listening today, to me, and to all the women who have been able to be motivated by your story and that will keep continuing to be motivated by your story. And so at this point, we want to hear from Councilwoman Testerman. Let us know again, what and who inspired you to take on public service and be an elected official? And how did you channel that vision into reality? What hopes do you have for ideas and innovation and opportunities as it relates to other women taking that big step forward?
So thank you, and Councilwoman Zulfat, that was a fabulous story, and it was just, I loved hearing it. So what a privilege. So my journey into community and making a difference started when I was very young with a dad. He had a love affair with our city, inspiring him to be a passionate public servant. servant, and a mom. She was lockstep with that passion. So I saw firsthand from the two of them how one person through ability and action can make a difference. And that's what really started to shape how I viewed the world around me and lay the foundation that I would inevitably build on. Other than supporting my father during his campaigns, I've always said I was not politically motivated until later in life. But what I've since learned, and I now realize that at the very core of politics is community. And at the core of community are people, all of us, who are working collectively to contribute to causes and initiatives to make the places where we live, work, and play better. And truthfully, that's a team sport. I think as women, we can all play. I've spent the majority of my life in every community I've lived in across the country and being involved and giving back to different causes. And I love grassroots efforts. I love launching new initiatives. And as a thought of running for office, running for public office, started to creep into my mind roughly 15 years ago, it occurred to me that it was inherently about taking that involvement, taking that passion, and funneling my drive and motivation to affect change on a grander scale that would help make decisions to move our city forward and contribute to what I called for our hoped for future for everyone. After a lot of soul searching and finding the confidence that, yeah, I could do this. And after all, my initial thoughts were, why would anybody vote for me? What credentials do I possibly bring? It was imperative for me to surround myself with people who could lift me up. Because if there's one thing I can say, no one achieves election to public office alone. And my advice to any Wonder Woman, even pondering about running for office, is to seek out people who inspire you and those who are wizards of the interests and causes you wholeheartedly believe in. Those who are the teachers of life and can help you dig deep in order to grow, and even those with opposing positions of your passionate causes to give you a holistic perspective and challenge your way of thinking. I ran in 2016. I ran a partisan district county race against two other males. It was a three-way race. And in a three-way race, it really just comes down to math. But I lost that race. And it took a minute to get past that disappointment and rebuild my confidence. But I knew we had laid a great foundation. We ran a clean race. And I continued to be surrounded by people who encouraged and motivated me. And most importantly, I was not ready to give up. If there's one thing I've learned in my wisdom over the years is things never go as planned. Persistence pays off. Timing is absolutely everything. So as I picked myself up, I also had this epiphany about our city and my role in it. So I sat back, I started to regroup as the 3 at-large city council seats were termed out and coming up for re-election in 2019. And people had long been telling me that the city was a better fit for me. Knoxville was progressing more. It is a nonpartisan race, which is much more reflective of who I am and those I surround myself with. And my dad, after all, had served the city of Knoxville. So once I made that decision and picked a seat, it just felt right. I love the idea of running at large, representing every constituent across the city, listening to their diverse needs, their dreams, and the visions they had for their best hoped for future. So this journey and endeavor is about the greater good and something much bigger than ourselves. I'm a big vision girl. I always have been. And for me, it was about creating a vision for our city. How are we going to be the best version of ourselves? It's like creating vision boards. What do you want your life to look like a year from now, 5 years from now? What do you want the footprint of your life to look like? Then what are those steps that you're going to take to get there? As best-selling author Brendan Burchard said, it was a great quote. It is a psychological need to believe that we can endure, a psychological need to believe that we can not only endure, but that we can succeed and thrive, and we can have our way in the world so that we can accomplish our dreams, make influence, and make our own difference. He says, have hope. So I'm a cancer survivor. That's a life experience that is steeped in hope. And if your plan is to survive, you don't have a choice. So we are all responsible for our attitude. We're responsible for finding the positive, which in turn breeds hope, because hope isn't something you have, it's something you create. So my question to you is, what do you hope for? What's your best hope for future? And once you answer that question, go for it and be the example for other young girls and women trying to find their way. And I'm excited to see what the future holds, and for those women that really start to realize their passion and work toward that goal and accomplish it.
You so very much for your powerful story. I love how you said that you view this public service as a team sport, and as women, we can all play. We can all be on the team. That's very inspiring and motivation. And I love what you talk about in terms of your persistence. I've been kind of reading a book about grit, which grit, that's kind of the foundation of grit, is just, working hard and persistence. And we know, studies show us that it's not always the smartest person in the room that can win, or that can be successful, the most successful. It's the one that doesn't give up. It's the one that keeps going and just continues to grow and develop and just does not let go or give up. And so that's the story, Councilwoman Testerman, that I hear from you. Thank you for sharing your story about your survivorship, your survivor story with us. So very powerful. So thank you both. So I've got some questions I want to pose as we kind of wait for some specific questions to come in from our chat. And I guess the first question that I have is, what was the actual tipping point, right? Like, what was the actual I'm going to do this moment for you, both of you, in your initial races, because you both ran for races before you got to the position you're in now. But what actually, like, do you remember that moment, that person, that time, that place when it was like, I'm just going to go for it, let's do this? What was that for each of you? And we can start with Councilwoman Suara.
Thank you. For me, I was in my office. I have a CP office, and people will come in, and it's a small town in West Tennessee, and people will come in. And so someone came in one day and was talking and shared the story about the young man that went to college, and that's the one that came to college in Nashville to do engineering, but is having so much trouble because he did not have a good math background in school. I'm sad to say that he's still in school now. It's been about 8 years because he's having to take those math classes again. And I just could not, for the love of God, just sit still. Our kids at home, we can help them and guide them in terms of, these are the classes you should take, these are the things you should do, but not everybody has that. In a small town like that, this kid was the first one in his family to go to college. Nobody had that conversation. And we leave that to the guidance counselor. Unfortunately, sometimes in very large schools, guidance counselor focus on kids they think will go to college rather than all the kids. And I think that he was one of those that was missed, and nobody told him that. And I felt this should not be happening. Something's got to change. And what I want to see is a guidance counselor. If we need more guidance counselor, let's get them. If we need to structure our guidance counselor, talk to our children, let's do that. And I believe that if I'm on the board, that is a conversation that I want to have in terms of preparing these kids for college. And so that was when I decided, you know what? I've been saying this, and I think I need to go there and do it myself. So that was the point for me.
Thank you. Councilwoman Testerman.
I think for me, remember I said it was about 15 years ago that, these conversations and this dialogue started to happen. I was like, really, what can I bring to the table? And so fast forward 10 years, about 6 years ago, those conversations had continued over this period of time. And so I'd really spent a lot of time talking to people and trying to figure out, what was the launching pad, or where was I going to start? And I remember that, in the race that I was in, it was a three-way race. It was the incumbent. It was a guy that I'd been friends with virtually my whole life, and he had already been out campaigning for a year. And I thought, man, this is hard. And I remember sitting in my driveway talking to Jamie Woodson, who's a former Tennessee state senator, and just kind of get her advice. And she was a great female trailblazer in our state as well, and especially around education. And she's the one. I said, it comes down to math, but for me, I knew I'd been thinking about it for so long, and sitting in my driveway on the phone with her, I'm like, if I don't do it now, I'm probably never going to do it. And I really try and live my life with as few regrets as possible. And I just didn't want to look back and think, why didn't I? What kept me from doing that? And so I was like, let's go.
Wow. Let me ask you this, Councilwoman Testerman. How can someone sustain hope, especially since we hope in concepts and sometimes in other people who change over time and are naturally flawed? Does that make sense?
Yeah, can you say that again?
Yeah, right. So how can somebody maintain their hope, sustain their hope when oftentimes our hope is placed in an idea or a concept or a person who may change? Something may come out that could be a little disappointing about someone, because we are all flawed. None of us are perfect. And how do you continue to have hope when that in which you were holding hope in shows to be less than perfect?
Well, I think there's always hope. I think, none of us are perfect. And I think, despite the deep divides that we've seen lately and that we've seen around our country and around political figures, I think when you really present the issues to the public without, there's a broad consensus when you really focus on the issues. And, I think too that, even though we've got differences, and even though that, system may be flawed or whatever, I think if you really come down, we've got a lot of common ground. And I think that's where I find a lot of hope. I might not have walked in, Councilwoman Zuhara's shoes, but at the end of the day, if you really get down and you look at, it could be love or family or humanity or all of these things, we have so much common ground. And I think that's where we really come together, where we can get things done. And, we have to be able to speak about the issues with one another beyond the figureheads that people identify with. So, politicians come and go, but at the end of the day, the issues remain the same and they continue on. So, if we commit ourselves to building long-term, bottom-up coalitions around solutions, I really think that that's where at the core we find hope, and you start to break down the divides and able to accomplish some really great stuff.
Thank you. That really touches on the next question I had. And so I'm going to ask this of Councilwoman Suara. Do you find that there is hope in breaking down the divide that we see in political parties? It can seem so counterproductive, well, based on what we see, but do you find that there is hope there? And if so, let us know a little bit about your thoughts as it relates to that.
Yes, there is. I think a lot of the issue that we face is because we're not talking to each other. What I found as somebody that live in rural West Tennessee, and people talk about, how did you live in Bolivar for 16 years? How did you run for office in Bolivar for 16 years? My family was the first Muslim in Bolivar, Tennessee. A lot of people don't even know about Bolivar, Tennessee. But what happened is that when you get to know people as individuals, when we start talking, that commonalities that Councilwoman Testerman was talking about, that's how you find it. That's how you break the barriers. That's why when we start talking to each other, and that's what I've seen in my journey throughout the United States, that when you really think about it, the people that are hardcore don't want to listen to everybody, made up their mind, are very small. When I was running in Nashville, I had a lot of personal attacks. But what I was telling everybody is that that does not represent the majority of us. The majority of us worry about our children. The majority of us worry about our city. All of us want, as a woman, how do we find the cure for cancer? How do we support each other? That's what we are about. And so I believe that when we start getting to know each other, when we start having those conversations, when we start, leaving our comfort zone, because I think we all do it. Everybody talk to the people that look like them, that is part of their party, that is part of their church. People don't venture out to seek other people. And this idea of us and them is everywhere, right? They don't like us. They don't like us. Everybody think about that. But when we start thinking about each other as humans, when we start looking at those commonalities, when we start talking to each other as people, our kids play on the baseball team together. We share, holidays together. And when we start looking at that, I think we can break down the barrier. I did a show for the Story of Us about 2 years ago. And it was one that they brought a Republican guy and myself together. We've never met before. And they just said, will you be willing to talk to someone on the other side that you've never met? And I was like, oh Lord, okay, let's see. And we went on this thing, we started talking. By the end of the day, we have friends in common. We both did leadership Nashville together. I mean, different times, but we find out that we were saying the same thing. Ordinarily, a white Republican guy, people will automatically, Christian guy, will automatically think that is against a Black Muslim woman. And so there's a lot of misconception out there. We can leave the party to the side. We're never going to agree on some of the things that our party does. That's fine. But as human beings, as parents, as citizens, we can see the humanity in each other, and we can find that common ground that the Councilwoman talk about. And that's my hope. It is happening. It will continue to happen. And that's the only way change can happen. We have to make the effort to make sure that we do that.
Absolutely. I always say that nothing dispels stereotypes and myths like personal experiences. I mean, that's the only way it happens. Otherwise, people look at people from afar and they cast judgment based on what they've been told, what they've seen from afar. And it's not until you have that personal experience that you're really able to kind of break down those kind of barriers that allow you to see our commonalities, which we do have much more of than our differences. Councilwoman Testerman, I've got a question from the audience, and I think it's a great question. She says, it seems like the political arena is full of extroverts, and that those personality types are possibly better suited to network, which we know can be really big when you're trying to run a campaign. What advice do you have for women who are more introverted, who need help harnessing their strengths?
Well, the truth of the matter is I'm a pretty high functioning introvert, as I say. And here's what I say and I kind of said this when I spoke, is first of all, seek out those people, that you can surround yourself with, who motivate you, who encourage you, who lift you up and give you that confidence. And then I just start to go, I was a journalist. And one of the greatest pleasures I have is that, ordinary people are doing extraordinary things, and everyone has a story. And it was just inspiring to me. And go and find people that, one-on-one conversations are great. Find a mentor. Go find people that really inspire you around your causes. Start there. Something that you're passionate about. Seek somebody out who really has a great expertise around that. And just to slowly, one by one, kind of build this network and be vulnerable and share your vision and share your passions. And you start to really, again, it's a groundswell of support that you start to develop, and get people who challenge you. I think that's, get outside your comfort zone, as Councilwoman said, and really start to seek people who will challenge you and challenge your way of thinking. And I think we all, I mean, I know a lot of my colleagues that are more introverts, and we all have something to give. So it's believing in yourself.
Yeah. I'm gonna also kind of play off a little bit about what you said in this next question, or play off this question into a next question, because this probably would be something an introvert would also be concerned about. But funding and raising funds, Councilwoman Testerman, how do you kind of do that? How does that work? How do you get the funding that you need for a successful campaign? And what does that even look like? We've seen campaigns run off of very little money that have been successful, campaigns where people have poured in tons of money and have been unsuccessful. But for someone who is an introvert and may not feel comfortable asking for things, asking money, how do you get funding? How does that work?
It's a big lesson in self-development and self-growth. I will tell you that nobody, and I'm in the fundraising nonprofit world, and there are very few people. It takes a gift and special people to really be like, hey, can you give me money? It's easy for me to go ask for money for animals, but to then go out and ask for yourself. But I would say, really, if you're really considering running, really think about why you're running and get that message down, and pick the top 3 things that you can go to somebody, because they're going to ask you, why are you running? And I would go sit in my car and make these phone calls and say, hello, so and so, and have this small talk and check in, and how have you been, etc. And then just say, I don't know if you're aware, I'm running for public office, and here's why, and I really would like to see if you would be willing to support my campaign. So I kind of, once you get, there's nothing easy about it. And I was very fortunate in my fundraising in both campaigns. But I don't know, you just kind of have to get in a different headspace. But kind of once you get a success, or somebody gives you $5 or $20 or $100, you're like, oh, wow, people do start to believe in me, and it becomes much easier. But target, but again, start with people, and get people to help you. Recruit those people that'll say, hey, can you help me raise $1,000, or whatever the case may be. It's not easy. It comes with the territory to make that, but I promise you, if I can do it, you can, because it's tough. It's tough to ask for money for yourself, but make sure you have your message and you really are able to convince people why you're running, and strike a chord with them. Find out what their passions are. Find out what their interests are. What's their best hope for a future in your city? Is it economic development? Is it homelessness? Is it affordable housing? And really, go to them and ask their opinion. People want to give you their feedback. They want to talk about themselves. So try and engage them that way as well.
Great advice. Councilwoman Suara, tell us a little bit about the experience with the council from the perspective of, do you find it to be a full-time role? How do you balance family, work, as well as your public service commitment?
So the council in Nashville is supposed to be a part-time position. And so when I started running, I actually had a full-time job, and I still have my full-time job. But when you get in there, you realize that no, it's not a part-time role. It's actually a full-time role with a part-time pay. Because if you really want to do the job well, you need to be able to talk to the people. You need to be able to respond to the people. You cannot say, oh, we only meet twice a month, so I'm going to respond to email twice a month. And so you have to be able to do that. And you have to be able to read the things you're voting on. You need to do your own work to be able to know what it's all about. And so being prepared, giving it all the time, it's very necessary. In terms of balancing family, work, and everything, we get this question as a as a woman all the time. How do we balance it? I've been very fortunate. My family's been very supportive in all that I do. I don't have a typical African home where the woman has to cook all the time. My husband cooks, clean, does everything that I need to do. I have grown children. I have 5 children, but 4 of them are grown. And so I have a lot of support from my family and also from my colleagues. I mean, we work together. When you're on a council where you have 20 women, or when you have a lot of progressive, it's not as difficult because as you having those arguments and those conversation, you realize that a lot of people are thinking along the same line. And so it's been very, how do I put this? It's been very challenging because we came in into a lot of budgetary issues when we came in, and we've been putting out a lot of fires. So it's been very challenging, but it's also rewarding because I'm glad that I'm there. Somebody asked me if I would have run if I knew all the things that happened in Nashville in the last year. And my answer is I'm glad that I'm there. I would still run knowing that because the opportunity, people talk about being at the table, people talk about being part of the solution. You don't get there if you're not there. And so whatever solution our city is coming up with, I'm glad that I'm there. I do want to add a little thing to what Councilmember Testerman said about fundraising, because I think it's very important and she nailed it on the head. For me, running I just moved back to Nashville, running a place where I don't know a lot of people, coming back again. I haven't been in the political scene in Nashville, and trying to raise $150,000 was a challenge. But the key was starting with the people that you know, people that already believe in you. Those associations, the WPC and the Shishuron and connections that you've made over the years are very crucial because that's where, because if you're talking to people and they're telling you don't run, it demoralizes you. But if you start with people that know you already and believe in you, then it's a lot easier. And that's where you get your confidence from. For me also, it was very important for me to have small gatherings, right? And so we did a lot of connections, right? So I know Janet. I don't know everybody in Knoxville, but people that know Janet trust Janet, right? And so if Janet hosts an event for me and I have the opportunity to talk to her friends and they will believe what she's saying on my behalf. And so when I meet people, my ask is always, would you host an event for me? Would you write a letter for me? Would you give me money? And so by having surrogates, in some ways, going and talking about you, talking to their friends about you, asking their friends about you, also increases your pool in terms of fundraising and also in terms of getting the votes. And I think it's very important. So it's not always about the large events. It's not always about the mass stuff. It's about the smaller circle. And then you do a lot of smaller circle. And before you know it, for every 10 person that tells 10 people and 10 people, your network starts to grow and your money starts to come in.
Well, thank you so much. I'm going to put a couple more questions out there because we're soon coming to a place where we need to kind of start wrapping. But I do have this question of Councilman Suara. How much of the position can be learned on the job? Obviously, as a candidate, you want to be prepared for the position that you're running for. And should inexperience really be a factor in holding somebody back from running?
No, it should not. And I think that that's what we as women do to ourselves. We always believe that we have to have all the qualifications, we have to have all the experiences in the world to run. Men don't think like that. And we have to stop thinking like that. And let me say this, that people always think that you have to be an attorney, you have to be in political science to be a legislator. That's not right. The issues that impact the citizens is not just about politics, right? We need doctors, we need lawyers, we need accountants, we need educators. And so all of the experiences in the different jobs that we have come into play as a candidate or as an elected officials. I also tell people that if you're raising your kids, if you're working with your staff in your job, if you're making your own budget in your own home, you're already running something. And so we need to give ourselves credit for all the stuff, all the experiences that we've accumulated over the years. We always have to do twice as much as the boys. We've always have the experiences. What we need is the confidence in all the experiences that we've had all our lives, whether as daughters, as students, as women having to do 2, 3 jobs because we're not making the same thing as guys, right? We've always have to do that. And so all of those experiences come in handy as a legislator. One of the, we just had an election for US Senate. The lady that ran, Marquita Brascio, is an environmentalist, right? And so how many environmentalists do we have in Congress? She did not win, but that's a unique background that people may not think about 10 years ago. But if you're talking about climate, an environmentalist comes in, not a lawyer. And so I think looking at our background, can you learn on the job? Uh, Yes, you can learn on the job. What you're learning on the job is not how to make a decision. What you're learning on the job is not using your common sense. What you're learning on the job is not how to be an advocate for people. What you're learning on the job is the protocol, right? Who goes first? What do you say in terms of when you get up? Okay, can I have the committee report, please? That's what you're learning. The protocol is what you're learning, not necessarily how to make a decision. How to make a decision is already imbibing us, and it's just another place for us to use that experience that we've always had.
Thank you. I'm gonna pose this last question of Councilwoman Testerman before we begin to wrap up. What kind of differences have you noticed between the role that you're in as you imagined it while you were running and versus now that you're actually doing it?
Well, I mean, it becomes much more real when you're in it. And again, I think you really, well, you want to follow through. I mean, you campaign on certain issues. Going back to why any of us choose to run, you want to affect change at certain levels or around certain issues or whatever the case may be. But I think after, once elected, kind of the reality of, you're here. And for me, it's really, checking in with myself daily to say, am I following through on my commitments that, I talked about when I was running? And am I keeping my word? And am I being responsive? And, am I really, my thing is I want to really help. I mean, I'm citywide, and every part of the city has different visions. It has different needs. It has different desires. And so it's not a cookie cutter approach when you're, when you're in this seat, and you really want to continue to listen to people and what it is that they want and problem solve. So I think you're finally in a job. The reality is that you are actually now able to problem solve. And now it's finding, if you don't have the answer, finding those people that do to help resolve things or help move things forward for your constituents and those people who've invested in you. So, you have the vision and the desire, but now you're in it and it's reality. And it's really just rising to the occasion and making sure that that you're delivering and, you're earning, continuing to earn the vote even after the fact.
Thank you. Thank you both. Thank you both, ladies. I appreciate everything that you've given us today. It's been so much, but I've heard a lesson in persistence, not giving up. But even more that I think I really want to point out is we should understand that we are enough. We have enough of the skill set and what we need to run as women. We've got the personal life experiences. We've got our experiences in our relative professions. And we need to identify those things that we have passions in. And that gives us what we need to be successful, not only in running, but in the role in which we're looking to run for. And so, for anybody who may be doubting your qualifications, are you good enough? We are good enough. We already have what we need. We just need to take the step and stay committed to it. And don't worry if that first try or second try doesn't turn out as we expect it to. The goal is to just stay in the game, because eventually we will get there. We'll find the right seat. We will get the support starting with our smaller networks, which will then help us to expand to our broader networks, and we will be successful. Even if we are just putting, inspiring somebody else to come up behind us, or getting the city warmed up for what they need to be ready for, getting them warmed up, to the experience and the exposure of who we are, what we're going to bring to the table. And if we're not successful that first time, at least they've heard of us. They know we're coming, and we're coming back again, and we already have them a little bit warmed up. And so next time we can get over that hurdle. And so you ladies have been such a great example of that. And thank you for sharing all of that with us. For those of you who have attended today, we're very grateful to each of you for attending, asking these thoughtful and insightful questions, and committing to support the cause for women's political representation. And we're going to thank you in advance for stepping out there and running and fulfilling roles that we know we need women to be a part of. She Should Run helps uncover the roles of each and every one of us in playing and advancing women's representation. And if you would like to continue today's conversation, we invite you to join the She Should Run community so you can continue to engage with some of the incredible women participating as attendees today. I also invite those of you that are here in Tennessee, please check out the Women's Political Collaborative of Tennessee. We've got great programming going on right now. All of you can actually participate in because we're doing it by Zoom. We have a book club that we get the authors. Actually, we've been very successful in getting authors to join us on our book club meetings to share about the book with us, and that's been really great. You can go to WPNTN.com to find out more about that. I also want to acknowledge the veterans that we may have on today. Yesterday was Veterans Day, and we know their service is something we cannot thank you for enough. And so I want to acknowledge veterans, for those of you that are on that have served, for those of you who have family members that have served or that currently do serve, thank you very much for that. We are going to have a brief survey that's going to pop up at the conclusion of this. It will only take about 3 minutes. We really ask that you take the time to fill that out. And very quickly, I want to answer one question that was in the chat. A couple of people asked about the Grit book that I mentioned earlier. The name of the book is Grit: The Power of Passion and Perseverance by Angela Duckworth. So I do advise that as a great read to kind of inspire us a little bit more on that road to running. So I'm going to turn this back over to the She Should Run host today. I thank you for your time and commitment to be here and for listening to us today. And again, I thank you, Councilwoman Testerman and Councilwoman Suara, for your participation with us today.